White Solar and Energy Storage Podcast at Intersolar San Diego. Stay classy, San Diego. Whoa, whoa.
Okay, we're on. We're doing some podcasting here. I'm Sean White. This is Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast, and I have my wonderful guest here, Ty Fenton. And Ty is the Director of Data Analytics at FlexGen. So tell me about like FlexGen. Is it like flex like you've got a lot of muscles? Is it gen like something that goes with tonic? And I think gen does have something to do with energy because we have ethanol and there's ethanol in gen.
It's a creative idea, but I think more flexible generation. So
flexible generation, okay.
Yeah, FlexGen at our core, we're energy management software. Mm-hmm. And so we'll help turn your battery on and keep it on essentially. So we provide the software that keeps your battery working and then we kind of help you throughout the entire life cycle that your battery is running as well.
Okay, so flexible generation battery management software. So do you have a favorite type of battery technology or do you just work with all of them?
We work with many different types. I mean, by far the most common is lithium iron phosphate.
Mm-hmm. Lithium iron phosphate. Okay. Mm-hmm. A type of lithium ion battery. Great.
Mm-hmm. LFP. Yep.
And that's pretty much the most popular one in the industry right now because it's, it's relatively safe compared to what might have been in my car that just got wrecked. But that's another story. Let's not talk about that anymore.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And so I know that you used to be in the solar industry too. I think you got your start in solar and then you went to batteries, to energy storage, and then off to data analytics. So what's more important and which is terrible? Solar, batteries, or data? Which one do you want to throw away and which one's most important? And
yeah, so
this is a trick question.
So my background, like you said, was in solar, and I started out in the control room at Strata Solar, actually, and then moved quickly into data analytics. And so there's a lot to be gained from analyzing your energy assets and making sure that, when they're operating the best they can be. And, I spent close to a decade doing that and then moved over to storage world with FlexGen. And what I learned when I sort of crossed into the new industry here, very, very tangential industries, but the new one, is batteries are far more complex. You get way more data coming out of batteries, and the analytics are far more important for the operations of the battery. Whereas in solar, you might be eking out a, maybe 5% maximum difference in performance. With batteries, you're talking about massive downtime, you're not getting your full nameplate capacity, all these really important things that won't happen unless you have the proper data analytics to back it up.
Yeah, so we go to like the early part of the solar industry, like way back over 10 years ago, and it's like we just had net metering, and we have a solar system, and we just export if we're making more than we're using. And now we have batteries, and we have different prices for importing, exporting, and also different prices for time of the day and stuff like that. And it could even be like real-time pricing, virtual power plants, and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of crazy to figure out like when you take that battery and you fill it up or you empty it out. And so I guess that's what you're dealing with.
There's a lot of considerations. We certainly help customers with that. Some customers prefer to go, with either their own in-house optimizers, their own trading desk, or third-party services. We really are there to
trading desk. That's what I do all day. I have one battery, and I just sit there all day trying to see if I could get 10 or 12 cents a kilowatt hour.
It's time to retire and the podcast.
Yeah. So how does that work with as far as deciding when to import, when to export, and when to fill up your battery and when to empty it out with FlexGen? So
our main consideration is really we want to make sure we have the software brains that's there to make sure your battery will be able to charge and discharge when you want it to. And it sounds really simple, and you plug your phone in and it starts charging, start using it discharging, or cars even. But when you have these massive systems in the field, they're not a single battery, even though it might be contained in a enclosure. They are thousands, sometimes millions, depending on the side of the site, of individual cells. And each one of those cells will have their own electrochemical characteristics. And if you have even a single bad cell, and by bad I mean maybe it came out of the factory not quite sealed as appropriately, or it's degraded faster due to bad storage conditions or anything like that, what happens is that one bad cell can limit the impacts of all the other cells that are wired together with it, which will be hundreds or thousands, depending on the configuration of the site. And so you have to have control software that can really easily be able to go in, assess the conditions of the site, and redistribute commands throughout all those distributed systems without noticing at the point of interconnection. The customer wants to know, hey, I want a megawatt right now. And it's our job to make that happen, regardless of what their system is doing.
So does your software like look at bad cells then? And then like, let's say there's like 1,000 battery cells in some kind of energy storage system, and one of them's bad. What do? Bypass that group of cells that battery's working with? And do people know when that happens? And how do they know if it's something that they could do maintenance on, or do you just sacrifice that string of batteries? No.
Yeah, so that's something that obviously depends on the situation, but I'll sort of talk about our overview approach to it. And it's something that is really interesting at FlexGen because of we have within FlexGen, we have the control software, we have our own operations team and remote operations center, performance engineers as well there, and then we have our data analytics team. And so kind of what we're able to do is the control center and the performance engineers will say, hey, we're having this one problem we see repeatedly where there's a bad cell and it's influencing the operation of the site. Our customers aren't getting all the energy they need out of it. Then we go to our data analytics team and they take the kind of on the ground research that the performance engineers did and they turn that into algorithms. And so now we can detect this cell it's not failed. It's not at the point now we're getting downtime, but it's coming down to that. We can go back and train models on all this data and be able to tell this is a problem. And then where it's possible to, sometimes cells aren't bad. Sometimes they're just imbalanced, where for whatever reason, maybe you might due to welding in the system or some other things that's sucking current out of a certain cell, you can have a cell that is a perfectly fine electrochemical cell, but it needs to have a bit more charge added to it to balance it with its peers. And we have software now that can do that. And so we've been able to build up kind of like following that chain, we're able to have that closed loop where now the software can go in and you can automatically schedule balancing. We'll say, in the platform, we recommend that you do some automated balancing on the system, click a button and you can do it. Versus before that would have been, manual actions all over the place and cause a lot of downtime.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So for FlexGen, do you focus on different sizes of energy storage systems, like residential, commercial, industrial, utility scale?
We're entirely on utility scale systems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So like big container size batteries,
yep.
mostly.
Yeah. Storage containers of batteries.
Mm-hmm. And then do you have everything operated from like a central command center?
So
like, have you seen Spaceballs? They have a really good central command center that I think that you should copy.
I don't know if we can do with the space part unless we partner with Elon there. But so we do have our remote operations center, which is a central command for all of the sites. And so that's a NERC compliant control center that does see the real time data coming in for all the sites, able to take action on that. As you mentioned, there are some risks associated with these batteries, and a fire risk is the main one. And so we're always looking out for any thermal events, any sign of that might indicate we need to have action done on site right away.
Did you know that at a central command center, that if you have more monitors all over the place, it means that you're doing better work?
As a former employee of a command center, I can confirm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the characteristics that you're looking at, I guess, like battery temperature, cooling systems? What kind of things do you look at and make data points for?
Yeah, so at the DC level, at the cell level, you're measuring the temperature and the voltage for the cells, and you're measuring current. Normally, is going to come at a more accurate level.
Like, are you doing it on the cell level? Like each cell has a temperature sensor?
Each individual cell has one, and so there are different systems that will bring in that level of data to your operators, and so some of them will report into that exact cell level and say this individual cell has temperature voltage. Others will go with the rack level, sort of that whole container, kind of refrigerator size container, and say this is the maximum and minimum and average. And in most cases, you're able to detect any issues that would arise on a site from those summarized data points and don't need to go down to the exact cell level unless you're the maintenance tech on site who really wants to dig into what's going on.
Great. And I know sometimes even the fire suppression systems at some of these big, utility scale energy storage systems have actually shorted out and caused fires and things like that. Do you also monitor like the fire suppression systems and make data points for all that stuff too?
We certainly have some data that comes in on them, and we've actually had problems with them, not from any actual fire, from false alarms that come in at times, where they'll be overly sensitive and trigger based on non-fire events. It's something that it does. We'll have an alarm that come in and says this is activated. Your fire emergency alert is activated, and then we go out of the site and it's not. But that is something that we certainly monitor.
So your customers, or the people that you take data for, are they lots of different companies that use different systems? Do you come in and work with a company that already has a different system? Is there any limit to who you work with?
Yeah, so we've been really focusing on sort of like the operational data side, but I think we're worth kind of backing up to like, a lot of what FlexGen does. And so we are hardware agnostic control system. And so, if anyone can come to us and say that, they want to buy, any battery vendor and they want to buy any PCS vendor, and they come to us and say, FlexGen, this is the best prices we got, and with reliability guarantees, whatever, make it work. And so we are able to package that in together. And it's interesting because one of the main problems of that is a data problem. It's a data mapping problem of finding, what data points are coming out of the system and what data points need to go back into the system and mapping them to our software and making it all work. And so we are working with lots of different systems. Customers come to us with all sorts of configurations, and we will be able to make that work and turn it on. And then on just the data side, not the control side, if a customer does come to us and say, hey, I want to have the analytics that you have, we'll also come in and map data into our system without the controls as well.
One thing that I've always wondered about is you have a manufacturer that has a warranty, and then the warranty expires, and they could be changing the software. Do you think that there's any manufacturers out there that are intentionally going like, oh, we don't care that battery lasts a long time anymore. We're going to cycle that battery up and down further? Do you think people are out there doing stuff like that?
So,
like they could if they were like an unscrupulous, battery company, could they just be like, okay, the warranty expired, let's cycle that thing from 0 to 100?
So the battery manufacturer has no direct control over the battery. That's all the customer who owns it. And the customer's usage is going to be dictated by warranty terms. And so they if they were to use their battery, there were some cases in ERCOT market where battery prices were really volatile and the ancillary services was a really, really hot market. Battery operators did use their battery aggressively and purposely voided their warranty in order to make the most money in the short term. And for them, they sort of did the math and realized that we have to replace this in 5 years, but it's worth it for us. We'll make a return on investment. And that's sort of the only example we're seeing of anyone who's going to be aggressively cycling their battery. The manufacturers have no control.
So let's say that your battery warranty is going to expire, then you just wear out that battery as fast as you can. Well, some people are doing that.
If you go over the terms of the warranty, they'll say you can only cycle it once per day. You have to stay within this depth of discharge or other, depending on the warranty terms. If you go outside of those, they won't replace it for you. So it's really, you can't use it aggressively like that and get your money back. It's kind of one or the other.
And one thing that I'm looking at in the future, because I have future goggles, is that there's a whole lot more lithium-ion batteries inside of electric vehicles. And as we start being able to support the grid with those electric vehicles, that's going to be a huge thing. Is FlexGen going to get involved with that? Do you have future goggles? They're pretty good to have. They work really good with gambling and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'll look into them. For the electric vehicle industry specifically, we have not gotten involved in there. We have batteries go really well with electric car chargers. Especially the ones that want to be able to supercharge your car. You can't just use the grid. You need to pair a battery with it. So it's something that application we've looked into, and in the future, I think it's very possible we'll be in that market as well.
Mm-hmm. And then I know you're doing utility scale batteries. So I guess with utility scale energy storage systems, you probably don't really get into the virtual power plant because you are the power plant, I guess. So you're not getting into that side of things.
That's true. It's a really interesting software problem that I think some of our engineers would love to tackle. It's something that has sat on the shelf before and some discussions, and we haven't pulled the trigger on it yet.
Okay.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Shaun White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's Solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
And so where is FlexGen operating out of?
We're based in Durham, North Carolina.
In Durham, North Carolina, and you're from North Carolina, I guess, too?
Yes, I am, yep.
Okay. And so as far as with FlexGen, do you have customers all over the United States, all over the world?
We are primarily based in the U.S. and have some international customers as well. ERCOT, CAISO, the Texas, California operating regions are sort of our hubs. But we have customers that are really all over the country.
And then are you working with the data center boom?
Yes, so that's actually one of the most interesting things that I think FlexGen is entering into in this year, and one of the most exciting things, on our horizon. With looking at those future goggles, something that we're really looking at.
Yeah, and so I was always wondering too, like with data centers, I guess they have a load profile. When people are awake, they're talking to their AI more often. And what does that load profile look like? Is it kind of different than what we're used to seeing? And I guess you're also seeing like the solar coming up in the middle of the day on a sunny day, but people are not using data centers just when the sun is shining, and so they have the energy storage systems. And what does the data center load profile look like? It's when waking hours, I guess, but then there's people in Europe, I guess, that are asking questions, so it's probably 24/7 to some degree.
Yeah, it's actually a really fascinating problem. So you're speaking more of the inference, people using the AI, after it's been trained, the models are in production. And that is going to be variable. When you send a query in, it's going to ramp up. But it sort of gets distributed by the fact that queries are going to be coming in at different times. And so you don't have everyone sending a query in the exact same second. And so overall, it's sort of, you might have variability, I'm talking, minutes to hours of variability, but it's pretty fairly consistent and nothing outside of a normal data center load. Where the really interesting piece comes in is training of those AI models, because
which takes a lot of energy.
It takes a lot of energy, and all the chips have to be synchronized in order to do that. And so they go through a cycle where they're communicating with the other chips, and then they have an intensive training cycle. And so what you'll see is the energy usage actually ramps up from about 10% of sort of the nameplate of that chip up to 100% energy utilization in less than a second. And so that causes severe fluctuation on the power usage that's coming from that data center.
So they can kind of control when the chips are doing their learning, and then they could make that kind of even out when, like maybe when people are sleeping or when the sun's down, the chips can slow down and speed up during those different times.
I wish that were as easy as that. Normally you have entire data centers dedicated to training, and those training loads will go on for long periods of time. It's not like just an hour for training or something like that. And so you really need to have dedicated solutions for the data centers that are doing the training that are really independent. And that's actually where batteries come in and play a really key point. If you have any other equipment on the grid, whether that's utility turbine, it can't absorb that much fluctuation in load that's happening there, and you need some way to dampen that, to stop those huge fluctuations in energy usage from reaching the turbine, or else you actually will break that turbine. And that's where batteries can come in. Batteries are able to absorb that huge fluctuation with really quick charging, really quick discharging, to make it so that at the turbine level, the utility level, you don't see those fluctuations.
Well, I'm a solar guy. I don't really care if you break the turbines. Who here cares if they break the gas turbines? I don't really care. In fact, I think that's good for the solar business.
Hey, I mean, I'm for it too, but we got to make it work for now until we can have solar on the grid.
And do you have so that is interesting for a lot of people too, to know that the batteries are not just working with solar, they're also working with natural gas and other things too. What about things like coal and all that kind of stuff? Do batteries help coal? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Any spinning turbine won't be able to absorb that load fluctuation that happens from AI training loads, and so you will need something to dampen that. Any spinning turbine, which a coal plant will also have spinning turbines.
So that's kind of interesting too. That these chips, they just need to all turn on at once.
It has to do with the training load profile. They communicate to each other, and they sort of sync up on the next task, and then they all ramp up their usage as the training occurs.
Wow. So somebody will be training a data center that's maybe as big as this building, and they'll have every NVIDIA chip in there just crank up all at once within a fraction of a second.
And it's a huge problem for the load, or for the grid.
Wow. It kind of reminds me too of when they were doing some of these particle accelerators, and they have to they're over in Berkeley or someplace at Stanford like that, and they have to take a whole bunch of power all at once, and they'll do it in the middle of the night and the lights in Berkeley will go dim or something like that. So
it sounds like a sci-fi movie, but like I said, these training loads have to happen over days, and so it's not an option just to put them when you have less load on the grid.
So how soon do you think until these big old buildings full of NVIDIA chips are going to be smarter than we are?
No comment.
and then they're becoming smarter than we are. Then a few minutes later, it might be smarter than everybody in the world all at once. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I came up with this idea yesterday too, that with the robots that are doing AI, that they should become corporations, because corporations, you've probably heard of like corporate rights and corporate personhood. So that's how we can make the robots people. But so let's get back to like the data, the batteries, and all that. So data, they say, is very valuable, and it's kind of hard for a lot of people to understand like how data is valuable. Maybe you could tell us how data is valuable, since you're like, I guess you're a data scientist and you're working with data and batteries and loads and sources and all that.
So absolutely. So it is crucially important. And so what we find in talking to customers who, maybe are coming to FlexGen later and have other operating sites is, if you aren't properly managing the data and you aren't properly understanding how your system works, you're not going to ever get what you were sold in terms of your battery capacity and utilization. You're going to have unexpected downtime. You're going to not be able to use your battery from the top to the bottom and actually get the full discharge, because you have these hidden issues that can be found with data. And so, at FlexGen, we have our predictive diagnostics algorithms that are constantly running and looking for these issues so that we can either fix them through automated maintenance actions or send out tech out to site to repair them. But if you don't have a sophisticated data solution, then you're just playing whack-a-mole, and you're really running your system at less than its full capacity.
Okay. And then we were talking about these big, giant buildings that are full of, computer chips, and they turn them on all at once and they figure out how to digest the data. Does FlexGen turn on a whole building full of computer chips ever at once to digest your data? Or like how does that work? Can a company that's digesting all this data do some of that? What do they call it? Machine learning, I guess. Is that what?
Yes, yeah, we do a lot of machine learning at FlexGen, and we also do utilize some AI too. Never on the controls of the battery. That's something that is strictly outside of the scope and not compliant with NERC.
Why would that be? Is that dangerous?
We don't want an AI controlling an energy site. Any critical resource of the grid, we want to have humans controlling that.
So you've watched Terminator 1, but what about Terminator 2?
We don't want to make that happen in real life.
When the robot becomes a good guy, right? Right.
But yeah, so I mean, we do use machine learning. Like I said, some of the predictive diagnostics that we do, that's going to be based on identifying scenarios where you see failures on your site, and then training models that look not okay. So this is when it fails. What about what it was doing 2 months ago? Are there any signs there that it was going downhill and would need to be repaired? And that's sort of how we train our models to catch these most common issues on battery sites.
I've always wondering about like the algorithm that they use to charge a lithium-ion battery or a different type of a battery. And they have a certain amount of knowledge on how to charge it up to 90% or 80%, or it depends on the technology, charge it to 100% every once in a while. With lead acid batteries, keep it at 100% as often as you can. Don't charge it below this percentage. Perhaps it's not something that you do the same thing every day. It's this chemical soup, and maybe like once a week you want to charge it more or something like that. And you're going to be learning that after they already installed the battery system. And so then you'll be like changing the way that you charge the battery. So I would imagine that some of this data that you're dealing with will help people figure out how to make the batteries last longer, even after the system's been installed for years.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we look really closely at the degradation of the battery, and we also model in, what if you were to start really using your battery heavily? What if there's something that comes up, some market opportunity, and you want to make more money in the short term? What does that mean in the long term? What if you're not happy with how your battery is degrading right now and you want to ease off of it to make it last the full 20 years? We sort of offer those scenarios. And it is a really interesting issue that actually is being decided by the operating data, or informed, because the degradation curves that the manufacturers put out are based on lab test data, which normally will have your battery going from 0 to 100, 0 to 100, 0 to 100, and then they sort of extrapolate out from there to make it a 20-year degradation curve. In the field, you don't do that. In the field, you're not going 0 to 100. You're meeting a 1 hour peak that might need you to only discharge half your battery at that point, and then you'll charge it back up. And maybe next time you're only doing 10% of your battery and then charging it back up. And so you have very non-normal distribution curves, which it's almost an open question still being decided by the data of how they actually will degrade in operation.
Yeah, I guess they call that accelerated aging, which I'm trying not to do. That's why I'm going to bed early tonight. And so accelerated aging isn't realistic. And when they're making these batteries, it's all so new. I would imagine that if we looked at like 90% of the lithium ion batteries in the world right now, as far as like, how many kilowatt hours, not including watch batteries and stuff like that, 90% have been probably manufactured in the last 5 years, maybe something like that.
Easily, yeah.
And so everything is brand new relative to what it's going to be like 20, 50, 100 years from now. And we're just trying to figure out how this stuff works. And like when my car that recently crashed was, and I wasn't driving. Okay. I was teaching somebody how to drive, but my car, when it was a 2015 car, electric vehicle, and they didn't know how long the battery was going to last, and it did last, longer than the car. And so it's kind of interesting to see like how this is all going to work. Like that, they don't know how long it's going to last. Everything's brand new, and so you're going to have different ways to charge and discharge batteries that you didn't know about in the first place. And so I'm really glad that we have people like you, Ty Fenton and FlexGen, out there figuring out how to charge and discharge our batteries and using machine learning and all of that good stuff, and not letting AI be in charge.
Absolutely not. No, it's fascinating. I'm so lucky to be working on these problems. Like you said, it has impacts on our real world and day-to-day life. And it also is really important for solar and renewable energy. I mean, batteries are a crucial part of the grid and allow us to put more solar and wind and other renewable resources on the grid. So the better batteries operate, the more resilient grid we can have and the cleaner grid we can have.
Okay. Well, it looks like our time is just about up. So thanks so much, Ty Fenton from FlexGen. And you can check us out at Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. And you can check me out at SolarSEAN.com. And I want to thank Suncast for letting us be up here on the stage. And I hope we had a little bit more fun than you expected. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good day. Have a great Intersolar.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Shawn, for hosting.
Stay classy, San Diego.